Well, Lynn Povich and Steve Shepard, thanks to both of you. You represent great markers in the whole world of journalism. Lynn, you in your fight, and you and your making us realize where we are today and how we can survive. But we're going to start first, because we have two women here, Steve, with Lynn, with your book, The Good Girls Revolt. That's a great title. So who were the good girls, and what were they revolting against?
Well, I was a good girl. That's part of the reason it's called that. But women who came to Newsweek were told, if you want to be a writer, go someplace else. So women who stayed were hired as researchers or fact checkers. And the women who wanted to write when they knew they did, like Nora Ephron and Ellen Goodman, they left because they knew they'd never be writers. So we good girls stayed, and we were the fact checkers until the women's movement started happening, and we realized that this not only applied to those women, it applied to us, because we were in a profession where we could not get promoted out of our class. And so we decided to sue for sex discrimination in hiring and promotion.
And that was early. I mean, nobody done this before.
We were the first women to sue. We sued on March 16th, 1970, when Newsweek published a cover story on Women's Lib called Women in Revolt. Mm-hmm. We announced that we were suing them, 46 of us.
Describe, what was it like to be a woman who knew that she could not get a job that was going to write anything that was going to get her name into that publication or a byline ever?
Well, it was considered a very glamorous job for women, because most women, if you remember, were only going to be teachers, nurses, or librarians. And so Newsweek was an exciting place to work, and we worked closely with writers and reporters. It was patriarchal. We couldn't move up. There was a lot of office wife. We were the handmaidens to the great writers. And, it was the 60s. There was a lot of sex in the office, a lot of it consensual, a lot of it crossed the line and was sexual harassment. And so it was an interesting mix of women who were raised in the 40s and 50s and then came of age in the 60s. And suddenly we had to challenge everything that we were taught a woman should be, and our bosses.
How hard was it, though, for the women who pointed out to their bosses that
it was very difficult, and not every woman made it. I mean, as much as we succeeded and opened the doors for many women who came after us, including at NBC and the New York Times and Reader's Digest, there were women who could not make the transition, who just were raised to think that they should get married and have children, and the idea of a career, they just couldn't do it.
Well, I guess on the other side of the aisle, Steve, you've spent some 50 years in journalism. You've had all kinds of jobs. You've been head of Businessweek for ever and ever. You were the founding director of the journalism school at the City University in New York. Right. And now you've written a book, Deadline and Disruption, that tries to convince us that the new world of journalism has hope. Why do you think that?
Well, I think from a journalistic point of view, it is hopeful. Journalism has been decentralized by the technology, more democratized. There are more voices. More people are doing journalism today on more platforms than ever before, and I think that's good. I think the technology will enhance journalism. It'll enable us to do crowdsourcing, to engage with communities via Facebook and Twitter. It'll be more participatory. We can Skype interviews in faraway places. So there's a lot of things to be hopeful for. We can engage communities. That's what I'm hopeful for. The part that I'm more worried about is a financial question. How are we going to support quality journalism in the digital age? What is the appropriate business model for the new world?
Steve, are the opportunities for originality and enterprise what one would think that it might be because of the plentiful ways that news gets put together?
Yes, and I think that in this day and age, ordinary commodity generic stories are not going to do it for an audience. It has to be original, it has to be enterprising, because there's all this information out there, and you need to stand out by doing original, creative, enterprising stories that they can't get anywhere else.
You have two books in my mind. Lynn, your book is all about a passionate revolt, and Steve, yours is all about a technology-driven revolt that all of us can find some fault with. And I was trying to see if there was any commonality between the passion for equality and the acceptance of the now, yeah. Which is the way that I'm sort of seeing this.
Well, I think that that technological change becomes inevitable. There's no stopping it, and it's not subject to human whims and, well, we'll do this, we won't do that. When technology happens to us, newspapers, magazines, broadcasts have to change because the technology is an imperative. Whereas in Lynn's case, it seems to me that there was more human choice and judgments going on and more passion in a way.
Well, I think because we wanted to be journalists and we couldn't be journalists, and so our landmark lawsuit opened the door for so many women, just as you have in your career. I'm hopeful that that the digital revolution, which has been pretty male-dominated initially with the internet, but with social media, I think it is a strength that speaks to women's strengths. We have networks, we connect with other people, we like to do that kind of media, and I'm hopeful that actually women will be able to gain a higher footing than they have.
2 interesting books, Deadlines and Disruption, about the future if you're thinking about journalism, what it was like to be a woman in the early years, we'll call them early years now, for women in the business. My thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Belva.
Mm-hmm.